We are getting reports from all over the country that the recently deceased are rising up. These undead are attacking anything living, which is rapidly swelling their numbers. Advice from the police is to stay inside, lock all doors and windows, call 999 and stay as quiet as possible. If caught out in the open, run. Do not walk because they are much faster than they first appear. Do not confront them because any bite or open wound could spread the infection.
Hola y cómo estás? Welcome to my session all about managing employee wellbeing in the workplace and at home. My name is Mark Stokes, I work for Untitled Intranet and we're bringing awesome intranets to on-premises and online SharePoint, and definitely check us out if you are interested in that space. I do a lot of work around SharePoint. I've been a SharePoint consultant since about 2003. And I've done a lot of work on the Power Platform lately, investigating all the other tools that come with Office 365, or Microsoft 365 as we should now call it. So what I want to do today is bring everything together. Obviously we're not actually in the zombie apocalypse, although it probably does feel like it sometimes. And I know from the past experience in the lockdown here in the UK, a lot of people started to struggle with their mental health when they were working from home. A lot of people suffered cabin fever, and it wasn't very easy for employers to identify when their employees had those issues. If they're not in the office, if you're not getting the face time, it can be very difficult to identify when people are struggling and when they need help. Because unfortunately, in this day and age, people don't tend to reach out. So here in the UK, we've just entered the second lockdown, and what I want to do is bring back some of the technologies that we brought in back through lockdown 1.0 and see if we can reapply them now. I did a long YouTube series on the isolation conversation where we talked about how employees can work from home, how we can enable them as employers, and we also touched very heavily on the mental health side of things. So now that we're coming back into the second wave, a lot of countries seem to be affected in the same way, I thought it's important to revisit this topic, and we're going to use the Microsoft 365 tools to actually implement a system to kind of keep track on the employees as we go forward. Now, before I get on, I want to make it very clear this is a technological showcase on how we can use the tools to collect this information. But you need to go off and do your own research about whether you should collect this information and what the implications are of that, of collecting mental health information and happiness information on your employees. So please do think about this first. Please do consult with anyone you need to consult with. And if you feel that you shouldn't be collecting this information on your employees, then please just be aware of what you're doing. In my examples, I make it clear that it's optional to the employees so they can complete it or not. Obviously, if they're not completing it, we need to take other measures to make sure they're okay. And also, we do make it clear how we use the information, where we delete the information, and how we're going to use it. Okay, and also that it is optional. It's not going to affect their ongoing employment. So please do bear in mind, that's the only caveat I'm going to put in place. Beyond that, we're into a technical solution. So what we're going to look at today is we're going to build an adaptive card that's going to be put into Microsoft Teams chat for the users, so they'll get a nice representation of a mini questionnaire, a mini survey. It's going to ask them 2 questions. It's going to ask them, how are you feeling today, on a rating of 1 to 5, and then it's going to go on and it's going to ask them when they last got some exercise. We found in our own business, and it's been very well proven, that exercise is fundamental to people's well-being. So even if people are working from home, it's possible they could end up being on their computers for a long period of time, especially for the younger generation who like to play games. So exercise is really good to make sure people get out of the house, get some fresh air, get the blood flowing, and actually that can have play wonders for their mental health. So we want to establish when people are actually getting out and getting some exercise. So that's what we're going to do. So we'll present that adaptive card to them in Microsoft Teams. Then we'll receive the response via Power Automate. We'll go and load that onto a SharePoint list, and then maybe we'll put some PowerBI reporting on the back of it so we can get an understanding of what maybe the happiness quotient is in our business, whether we're on a peak or a trough, and whether there's individuals who need special attention and special care. So that's what we're going to look at today. I think we can fit it all in. I built this solution in for about an hour, hour and a half, but that's having built it before. So we're going to whiz through some of it, and I'll talk about how we do it and what we're doing at each time. There is actually a couple of issues I hit along the way. So what's going to be really great is I'll talk about some of the remediation methods that I do when I hit issues and how I identify what's going wrong and how to fix it. So we'll zoom through them, but I will discuss them, and it's good for you to see that as well. So even as experts, don't always get it right first time. Sometimes we hit problems, and one of the most important things you can learn is how to actually identify where the problem is and how to resolve it. So that's very much my intro. Thank you very much, and let's go straight into building the actual solution. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to walk through the build of the process. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into SharePoint Online and we're going to create a list to store our information. So when somebody fills in the card, then we're going to actually want to store that in a SharePoint list. So we'll go ahead into our SharePoint site, we'll create a new custom list and we'll just call that Wellness. So here we can see it. So if we just go into our settings, then what we want to do is we want to actually create some additional columns that match the fields we're going to ask in our adaptive card. So the first thing we want to do is track the person. So this is going to be a person field in SharePoint, so we know who actually submitted it. We want that to be required, so we need to know who it is. We don't need unique values or multiple choice or anything like that, and we just want to set it to people only, so that's fine. Next up, we're going to create a column for the feeling. So this is going to track the first question on how the person's feeling on a scale of 0 to 5. I think we actually did 1 to 5 in the adaptive card, but it doesn't matter. No decimal places. We'll just set a default value to 3, so we'll just set a median value if they don't fill it in. Although we'll make it required in the adaptive card later, so there should always be information there. And the same thing we're going to do with the exercise. So again, just track the answer of the question, so when they last got the exercise. Same settings, 0 to 5, no decimal places, and set the default value to 3. Lastly, we want to track the comments, so if they submit another comment to us, just to give us some more information, then we want to track that. So just make it plain text, we don't need rich text or anything like that in there. And that's it, that's our SharePoint list all ready to go. We might put some column formatting on later on, but we don't need to do that now. I'd rather get a bit of data in first and we'll do that later. I'm just going to turn off attachments. I'm quite strict on the way I set my list up. I always try and do it properly. If I don't need attachments on there, I don't add it. So I'll just turn that off. If I remember where it is, there it is. There we go. So that's our SharePoint list ready to go. Now we're going to go into adaptive cards. So to get to adaptive cards, what you need to do, we need to go to adaptivecards.io. And it's not immediately clear where to go to get to the designer, but it's just this link right at the top that just says designer. Okay. I'm not a big fan of these custom URLs for these services, like adaptivecards.io. When I first came in, I was like, is this a Microsoft thing or not? It's difficult to know. But it is what it is. So we can see there's a whole lot of different templates. So when you're creating a new card, you can choose a template to start with. There's lots of different formats like stock options or weather or flight itineraries, things like that. So you can go from a template layout to start with if you want to, or for our case, we're just going to create a blank card and we're just going to do it from a plain one. So it's really nice, the UI, dead easy, and we just have a list of elements and components on the side that we can use, so things like containers, image sets, text blocks, images, things like that, inputs. So we just drag on a text block now, and we can just put in the title. So if we go through the options on the right, then we can see that we can configure this component, we can set the size of the text, make it large, make it bold, and we just have a title of our card. We can do columns here, so we could put an image on the left and we could put the title on the right, things like that. But for now, we're just going to keep it nice and simple and plain for demonstration purposes. So we're going to just put some more text in now. I want this to be a little lighter, so we just want to let people know that this is optional, that they don't have to fill it in. It's not part of their job, but we do prefer people to fill it in. Well, I just like to make that clear to employees over and over, just so they know what they're doing. A few options there, so we can change the font size, change the font weight, we can turn the subtle option on, which just makes it a little bit more subtle. So we can just kind of blend it out a little bit so it's there, people can see it, they can read it, but it's not necessarily a primary piece of content in the card. So we're just going to keep going down, building it up, so just put an empty container in, and then we can drag another text block into that container. And in here we're just going to put some description text just to explain what the survey is all about, and what we're going to do, and why we want people to fill it in. Put another text block in. So just going to put the question in here. So out of 5, how do you feel? And put a separator on top of it. Again, just customize the UI. So the really nice thing is, as we build adaptive cards, one of the benefits of it is it actually builds up JSON as we go on. So this JSON is a data structure. So even though we can see a visual representation of the card, all we're actually recording is the structure and the component configuration of the card. And then when we share this adaptive card, the place that it's rendered will decide how it should be rendered and how it should look. So if it goes into Microsoft Teams, that will take the properties from the adaptive card and render in a certain way. Do it through a mobile device or through a bot or a text chat or WhatsApp or whatever else it might be. That end client can identify how it should be presented to the user. So all we're doing is building up our basic structure and storing this JSON. And then later on we can take that JSON and paste it into something else like Microsoft Teams to share it with the users. So the box on the bottom right is our sample data editor. So if we want to see how an adaptive card looks with some sample data in, that's how we do it. If you take the example of the stock quote or the example of the flight itinerary, then we're not taking a survey and input necessarily, but we want to show information to the user. So that might be complemented with data from a SharePoint list or from a database or something like that. So this allows us to put in some sample data so we can see how our card configuration looks with that sample data in. So what we're adding here, so now we're just adding a multiple choice, sorry, I apologise, a choice set input, and this is going to let the user choose one of a few options. As it's building up, it's currently building up as a drop-down box now, but we're just putting in the choices. So we can put in the value we want to show to the user, and then the value we want to record. So really crappy is a 1, awesome is a 5, and then we have options in between. We can put some placeholder text in there as well. We can turn on multiple selection if we wanted to. I don't want to, so if we turn off the compact style, then it changes from a drop-down box to a combo, a radio button list. Then we just want to put one on for the second question. I apologise, I am recording from home. The light is going. I do not have my normal video set up here, so apologise if the quality isn't up to my normal standards. I do have some key lights on the way for my home setup, but there we go. Lockdown joy. So same again. So second question: when did you last go out for some exercise? Just create 5 options again, 1 to 5. You may remember in our SharePoint list we set it to 0 to 5. I could have set the default was 0 if they didn't answer it. So we're going to choose that. Give people the option to say, do you know what? I've not been out for exercise for a long time. Maybe I should think about going and do something tomorrow. Or last week, or earlier this week, or yesterday, or today. So we're going to go through again, get a negative to a positive reaction on that question. At the bottom, we just want to show a bit of a disclaimer at the bottom. Again, just telling the user, oh, sorry, no, first of all, we're going to do a text input, and this is going to allow the user to input a comment. So we've asked them how they feel, asked them when they last get exercise, but then we also ask them if there's anything else they want to share with us. If they've got any worries, any concerns that they want to raise, then this is the place they can do it. So we're just going to limit it to 500 characters. We don't want war and peace there about what's going on. We just want a quick summary so we know whether we should actually reach out to them or not. Then just to finish off so put the title on there. So just set the comment title. It's nice, just drag and drop, quick configuration, simple UI, really, really easy to do. I just make a little mistake here. It's not actually a text input I want, so I can't find the text field. I'll realise in a minute. Oh, yeah, that's not what we want. We actually want a text block. So we put a text block in here, and what we're going to add in is just a little disclaimer that the user can read. Again, we just explain that it's optional. We explain that it's not going to cause any issues with their employment or go on their record or anything like that, that will delete all the information after a month. So just to give them some confidence that they can actually submit how they're feeling. We'll act on it, but it's not going to be used against them. So again, it's up to you to make sure that your business is able to conform to those kind of rules. We can choose different colours as well, so we've got standard colours there, so you know, light, dark, subtle, things like that. Warning is a red, that kind of stuff. Okay, so last thing we need in here, so now we need a submit button. So when the user's filled it in, we actually need to give them a button to go ahead and click submit in. So scroll down to the bottom, we can see we have an action set, and within an action set we can create multiple actions. We only want one, so we're just going to add a submit button to it. So that's going to create as a button. Just leave it as default, give it a name, an ID. I do like to kind of add the right options in. We can add an icon to it via a URL if we wanted to and things like that. But basically, that's our adaptive card. That's it built. It's that simple. And that's generated all of that JSON for us. We can just copy that JSON out, save it somewhere. Now it's important to know that if you navigate away from this page, it does not save that JSON in that card. You have to save it somewhere. So copy it into Notepad, copy it to Visual Studio Code, wherever you want to do it, copy it out and put it somewhere. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to go into Power Automate and we're going to start building our flow. So the way we actually send it out to the users is by using a Power Automate flow, and we want this to run daily at 2 p.m. Actually, I want it to run 3 p.m. I think I'll correct that in a minute, and we want that to run every single day. So just go and edit the recurrence, just say that we want to run it at 2 o'clock. And the flow, for us to be able to save it, has to have a one trigger and one action in there. And I've just realised that I want to change that to 3 p.m. The reason I want to change it to 3 p.m. is I want to send it towards the end of the day. I'm going to set a timeout on it as well, so the user has 2 hours to complete it. So between 3 and 5 p.m. to complete it. And if they don't complete it in that time, then it expires, and we're going to send a message to some admin to see if they want to reach out to them. So we're going to create a variable here in our flow, and we're going to create an array of users that we want to include with this. Now, mine's just a short example. I'm just going to add myself into a single item array, but you might want to send this to hundreds or thousands of users. So you just need to change this area to go and look at all the users in your business, or maybe all the users in an Azure AD group, and you can use that as the basis and loop over all the users that you want to send this to. Because we're going to send it independently to each user in Microsoft Teams. So I put a comment in. It's just I like to rename the action so it's very clear what it's going to do. Put a little comment in explaining what it is. So if somebody picks this up in the future, then they know how to work with it. Now, one thing that's going to be a little trick I do here is I only want this to run on a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Friday. So my recurrent says to run every single day. So somehow I need to figure out if it's a day that I want to run it on. But I want to make it very easy to be able to change the days. So I'm just going to do a switch statement. And I'm going to switch on the day of the week of UTC now. So that's going to get the UTC date time right now. It's going to figure out the day of the week. So from that day of the week, I now know whether it's a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So then I can make a decision on when it goes. So I'm going to create these empty case elements within my switch. Because they're empty, if it's that day, then they're going to then it won't get run because there's no actions in there. So if it's Tuesday or Thursday or Saturday or Sunday, then it won't run, and it will just skip off to the and then if it's not one of those days, so if it's the day I want it to run, that's going to be Monday, Wednesday and Friday, then it's going to go into the default action. So again, I just rename my cases so when I come back and edit it after, I know exactly what's going on. So instead of me having to repeat all the actions every day I want it to run, all I'm going to do is put it in the default, so I'm essentially excluding the days I don't want it to run. So I want to apply to each users in my users array. So for every user in that array, this is the actions I want you to complete. So I just look at adaptive card, then I can see I get a load of actions from Microsoft Teams. And the one I want to pick is the ability to send an adaptive card to a user and wait for a response. Now, bear in mind this is still in preview, so just be wary. You shouldn't really use it in production, but just be aware of what you're getting. So the recipient, so I'm going to pick the current item from the apply to each. The apply to each is all of our users in our list. So again, just put a little comment so we know apply to each user. So the current item is the user. Remember, there's only one in the array so far, but that would loop through and do this individually. So again, if you've got tens of thousands of users, then you might want to find a different way or put some concurrency on the apply to each just to make sure it runs properly. The other thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to put the JSON code for the adaptive card into a compose action. I'm going to use a compose action, not a variable, because it's not going to change. A variable, by its very nature, has variation. It changes. In this case, I'm just going to use an adaptive card. I'm going to dump it in there. That way, if I did want to use the content of the adaptive card in multiple places throughout my flow, I only have to refer to that one instance. And if I need to make some changes in the future, which you'll see we do, then I can just change it in that one place, and I don't have to go routing through my flow to find it. So I use compose as a kind of variable there. And then in the message of my post adaptive card, I just put in the contents of that output. So I put an update message in, so once the user has clicked the submit button, I want it to change the view of the card, and I want it to send a friendly message. So it's going to say, thank you for submitting your wellness, stay strong. Now I want this to time out, as I said before, so I only want this card to be valid for 2 hours. If I haven't submitted by 5 PM, then I want it to send an email to the management team to say that they've not filled it out. So we use this format here, PT2H. That means a period of time, and then the time says I want to reference the time, and 2 hours. So what that says is I want this to expire after 2 hours. You could put days in there as well if you want to, but that's just an ISO format for specifying a period of time. So in this case, 2 hours. So what I can do now is 2 things are going to happen. That action is either going to time out after 2 hours if there hasn't been submitted, or it's going to be submitted within that 2 hours, and we can do some different actions. So I'm going to create 2 different scopes. So I'm going to use a scope so I can group those together nice and easy. I'm going to run them in parallel. So I'm going to rename it and say this scope is what happens if the user did not respond, and this is the branch I want to take if the user did respond to the card. Now we can use this configure run after option, so I can say run after the previous action has timed out. Now we've just set it to time out. We could do failed or skipped or timed out, but we're going to say I want to run this if it's timed out and it's gone to 2 hours. And on this one, I want this to run if it's succeeded. Therefore, my code now has some branching in there, and it will take one course or another based on what the user's done. So in this side here, what I want to do is get the user profile from Office 365 Users Service, and because I want to get their display name, I want to make my messages nice and friendly. So we get the current item again. So remember, the current item is the email address of the person from the users array. So I'm just going to go off, get their details, and then I want to send an email. So let's look for the send email action, and we use the send email v2 from Office 365 Outlook. Now this is going to send an email from me. I could configure it to send it from a shared mailbox if I wanted to. In this case, I'm just going to send it directly to myself. And in the subject, we can just put the name of the person, so we can say the given name or the display name of the person that hasn't filled it in, that they did not respond. If you're a small team, maybe the first name's enough. If you're a larger team, then maybe you want the full name. But again, you could do whatever you want here. You could have this go to their line manager. You could have it go to HR. You could have it go to anyone that you want to. The power of flow is in your hands here. So I'm just trying to keep it simple for the demonstration. So just put a message saying they did not respond to the wellness survey today. Maybe they're not available, maybe they're on holiday, maybe they're just not around for the day, maybe they just forgot or didn't have time, so it might not be an issue. But if someone's gone a few days without filling it in, then maybe they're struggling a bit, so the manager could do with reaching out to them. Okay, we can set it to important if we want to, because it's probably an important message. We have that option. There you go. So if the user doesn't respond, that's what we're going to do. And then we want to take the branch where if the user does respond to it, then we want to go and write this to a SharePoint list. So we're going to look for SharePoint. Let's see what actions we have. So we want to create an item in a SharePoint list. So we go back to our SharePoint site, get the URL. It's a brand new site, so it's probably not going to be suggested to me just yet. So you have to scroll down and click enter custom value, and then we can enter it in there. Otherwise, it gets us knickers in a twist. And then we can pick the list. So it's automatically found the list that we created on the site that we want to do. And now we can see that it's given us the option to put in our fields. So we need to set a title on the list. First of all, we're going to set the date time. So we want to say format the date time in a year, month, day format. So we're going to get UTC now, so the UTC date time now, and then we're going to format into year, month, day. The reason we do it that way around and slightly reverse is so that if we do a sort in the SharePoint list, we can sort on that text field and we're actually going to get a chronological order. Now, interestingly, there's a bug here. I don't know why this happens, and I'll go through some bug fixing in a minute to show you. But for some reason, it's not showing me the values back from the adaptive card. Now, previously, when I've done this, this actually gives me all the values from the adaptive card that I can access directly, but for some reason it's not doing that. I don't know why. I'm going to go into a bit of a speed up in a moment and show you some of the fault finding that I go through to explore this. But the outcome is I do not actually find a solution. I don't know why it's showing me, not showing me the results of the cards. So what I do, the first thing I do is I put some compose items in there. So when something's not behaving in the way that I want, then I actually go and use compose. So the first thing I do here is I just check that my array is okay. I check my branching's going all right. I go back to the beginning and just make sure everything's working the way that I should do. So you can see me just going through here, I'm just trying a few things and I'm getting the message that it's not branching as I'd expect. So that's a bit strange. So I'm just going to check my user fields coming through. I'm going to see what user property is being passed in. This is where the compose action really becomes your best friend. Anytime you have something happens and you're not getting the response that you expect, then use a compose. Dump the information out to compose, run it, see what value you get, and then see if that matches what you're expecting. So I'm just going to break it down a bit, make it simple. I'm going to put another apply to each in here just to kind of dry run it with a bare minimum. I'm going to check that the speech marks there are correct because I copied and pasted that from Notepad. So I want to make sure it's not pasted in a different set of speech marks. All these things can catch you out. So now I'm like, okay, well, it's not branching for some reason. It's not going to the correct day of the week, so why not? Okay, well, let's go and see what this expression is putting out. So when I do day of week, what's it showing me? Because I put in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but is that actually what I'm guessing? So let's have a look. So let's put a compose in, let's check out the expression and see what it gives us. And then straight away here we can see it's given us a number, a 0. So it's actually given us Sunday, it's Sunday today, so that's day 0. So now I know that my case statements are wrong. I shouldn't be checking for Tuesday or Thursday or Saturday. I should actually be checking for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we change Tuesday to be a 2, because if Sunday is 0, then Tuesday is 2. I want to work out what day of the week Tuesday is, I can put it in there, 2. Thursday will then be 4. Saturday will then be 6. So remember it's 0 based here, so Sunday is the start and it starts at 0. Sometimes in IT stuff we have 0 based number solutions. So if I run through here, straight away I can see it's not failed. So I can see it's going into my branch and I've actually been delivered an adaptive card. So it's actually worked this time. So that was the problem that I was experiencing before, and that's how I found the resolution to it. But it's given me an error. It's actually not rendering that adaptive card out in Teams as I would expect. So that's a different issue that I can now deal with. So I go through the same process again. I go back to basics. I go back to the start. I just check my flow at each and every stage just to make sure it's working in the way that I expect. So the way that you fix bugs is very important. Now, because I put a lot of extra composes in and I put a couple of extra apply to each in, I just want to go and tidy them up. I don't need them anymore because I've fixed that first issue. And I don't want to leave them hanging around. I could do, but it's going to affect the performance of my flow and I don't want that to happen. So I'm just going to tidy it up first. And then I'm going to go in and think, okay, so in that case then, why is the adaptive card not rendering in Teams? What's wrong with it now? I've just created it. There's no errors in the adaptive cards.io, or there's a couple of errors there where I had capital letters, or it had put in capital letters on large, and it apparently was expecting light, so lowercase. I'll just fix that, see if that works. No luck. Unfortunately, that didn't get it either. Still not rendering properly. Curious one, because the things I didn't write any of that code, it was built by the service, so you would expect that should just work. But it's not giving me any feedback either. It's just telling me that we can't render it, and Flow's not giving me any error. Flow said, yeah, I've sent it. We're done. I've done my bit, and then Teams are saying, no, I can't see it. So what I can do is I can go back and I can try an old version, so I created an adaptive card before that didn't have an action set, just actions, so I can try and replicate, see if that's what it is. I can delete it. I think what I can do now is I'm actually going in and putting in my previous adaptive card that I've been using for the last 4 months that I know works. And then it dawns on me, the difference is my previous card is version for adaptive cards 1.0 and this was 1.3. I was getting a message before saying the bot framework doesn't support 1.3, but it didn't say anything about Teams. But actually, if I go back and change my target version for the adaptive card to 1.2, that fixes it. So all that bug fixing, and that's all it was. It basically came down to the fact that I'd chosen the adaptive cards IO version 1.3, not 1.2. So if I go and update it with the correct version number, paste it back into my compose, make sure my action's sending it, and I can go and see that that is now submitting it. So that's now rendering my card. You can see it's not actually showing my titles, so I think the titles of that those columns come in on version 1.3. So I'm just going to go back into my adaptive card quickly, and I'm going to add in my question titles here so they show properly. So I'll add them back in, make them bold, nice and quick, copy it out. So this is the benefit of just putting it into that compose action. So all I need to do now, I don't need to go hunting through my flow to find it. I can just update it here, and it just takes precedence and just works. So that's a really nice thing to do. So make use of variables at the top, make use of compose actions. You could use a string variable here if you want to. There's not really anything in it. I just like to, from the programmer in me, I like to use a constant for something that's not going to change, or I like to use a variable for something that is going to change. So I can see now that that's rendering my card. So that's exactly what I expected to get. So I've got the option to put comments in, I've got the option to put in my my survey of how do I feel and when did I last get some exercise. Oh, I can see that my disclaimer text is white. I think I'll set that to light mode, so I can just set that to default text so it shows up nice. Paste it back in, run another test. What I try to do is every time I make a change, I try to change one thing or a couple of things and then go and test it. One of the problems you have is if you change too much stuff at any one time, then you don't know what change fixed it. So try to, it may take a bit more time, but try to change one thing, test, change one thing, test, change one thing, test. So I can go through, I can see that's all working, I can see it's actually created my SharePoint item as well. So we can see the user has responded, and we can see it's created an item. Now we haven't actually populated the fields yet, so we haven't got the person in there or the feeling, it just put the 3 in that we set as the default value. So what we want to do now is we need to go back in, we need to actually populate the result from the adaptive card into SharePoint. Now, very strangely, like I mentioned before, I don't know why, but it's not showing me the answers to the questions. So when I post the message in there, it's not giving me. In fact, I think what it might be because I use the output rather than putting the adaptive card straight in the message. That could be the reason why it's not giving me them in here. But fortunately, I happen to know the function I can use, the expression I can use to query it. So I can just use body, reference the action, the responder option, and then the display name. I can put that in there directly. So I know what it is. But I think that's one of the downsides of using the output for holding the adaptive card. That then means that action doesn't pass through the properties into my future actions. I think that might be what's causing it. But for now, I'm just going to go and paste those options in. So we've got the person claims. So the person claims is just the email address that comes back from the adaptive card submission. So I'll just get the right format here. So feeling, remember we set the ID of the feeling question in the adaptive card to be called feeling, so we can reference it nice and easy. This is why it's always good to put strong names into anything you build, whatever technology you're using. Same with exercise, and then the same with comment. Just need to remember if we called it comments or comment, because we do need to get it correct. If we don't get it correct, then it won't work. Yeah, with a singular, just comment. So go and update that. Okay, just give us a little error, that's fine, we don't need that compose anymore, so we can get rid of it. And that's it, so that should be good to go. So again, we've made a change into the SharePoint action, so we want to go ahead and test it. So now we should get another alert that we have another card come through. So we've got another instance of the card. So I can choose the options I want. That's maybe 3 and 5, just make sure it's not the default value. I can put a comment in, so let's make sure that gets written in. So it's all done, click submit. Card updates gives us our nice friendly message saying thank you for submitting your wellness information. And then we can look in the flow, that's completed. If we go over, yeah, we can see it's gone through all the different actions we expect it to. That's created the SharePoint item. Looks good to me, so let's go and check it in SharePoint. We can see, yep, feeling 5, exercise 5, I'm feeling great. So we can see the items coming as we expect to. But we might just notice that it only showed the date, it didn't actually show the user's name either. We didn't fill that in, we didn't get around to that. So we'll just go back, and if I just get my secret expression that I already know, and I can go and paste that in. So I know that's actually the user's display name, so I can put that in there. Now, when you go ahead and do it, if you, like I say, if you put that adaptive card into the post adaptive card action, it should suggest the questions and the answers there for you. So you should be able to just choose the correct response and put it into the SharePoint list without having to go through that extra little step that I did. So we've just run through again. So delete the item. Let's just run it again. Delete it just so we know what data we're working with. Click run flow. Submit it, so do a 1 and a 5, just make sure it's getting different options. So I like to use different options to make sure the correct value is going into the correct field. Okay, submitted. Yep, flow is completed without any errors. Go to SharePoint, and we can see our options in there. Feeling 1, exercise 5, and we've got our comment. So everything's done. That will work. So now we can send the card out to the users. We can get them to respond, and we can actually get the information back into SharePoint. Now it's in SharePoint, we can actually do something intelligent with it. Now, feeling a 1 and feeling 5 isn't necessarily very useful, so it's not very descriptive to somebody of what's actually going on. So what we might want to do is we might want to change the column formatting, and we can make this as easy or as difficult as we want to. So for now, we're just going to keep it quite simple, and I think maybe we'll just change the colours on some of the boxes. So if we go to the header, go to column settings, format this column. We'll just make it red if it's a low number, or make it green if it's a high number, and something in the middle. So on the conditional formatting, we can choose the column that we want to operate on. So we want to operate on the feeling column. We want to say if feeling is equal to 1, then go ahead and make it red, or pink, but red. So straight away that works. If we go into advanced mode, we can see again it creates some JSON in there. Now we could put some very complex JSON in, so we could actually say replace the value with an icon, or replace the text to actually show the text, and choose the correct color. So here we can say if it's 1, then we can say, do you know what, I feel a bit rough. So I'm not going to go into the advanced one, it's not what it's about now, so I'm going to keep it nice and simple and just do it through the click options. So we get some basic choices here. Let's go and reset that up again. But if you do want to, you can get into those advanced options. So if it's equal to 1, then make it red. Got other options as well, so we can make it bold, we can change the font color, we can put an icon on it as well, change the alignment. There's a whole bunch of different things we can do just from the WYSIWYG editor. And change the fill color to red. There we go. So put a little exclamation icon and change it to red. Okay, so we just go back, we can create additional rules in there as well. So again, say feeling is equal to 2, and make it maybe an orange, or maybe a lighter pink. So if we change the value, then we can see the colour change. Okay, it's not really that big a change in colour, so it's not really that clear. So maybe instead of a slightly lighter pink, maybe we want to make it more of an orange colour, so it's a little bit more differentiated. But maybe we just want to do the same for the other numbers as well. So if it's number 3, give it a yellow background. If it's a 4, let's also give it a yellow background. And if it's a 5, let's make it green because 5's good. So just change the number here just to make sure it all works, and now if we just change the value, it automatically updates as expected. We could do the same for exercise as well. I'm not going to do it now because I think we understand and get the idea of it. So we'll just set it back to 2 just so we can see it out there. And there we have the main bones of what we're talking about today. How to easily create an adaptive card that gives a good user experience. How to use Power Automate Flow to send that card to a user within Microsoft Teams to get them on the channel that they're interacting with there and then. How to get them to reply. How to process that back into SharePoint so we have it as a list of data. Now we've got that data coming in, we need to do something intelligent with it. So we could either manipulate the SharePoint list, we can create groups so we can see everyone who's submitted on a particular day. We could go and do more intelligence with Power Automate and Flow. We could actually get it to trigger if someone's saying a 1 that they're really struggling to go and do something, go and contact their manager or contact a wellbeing expert, something like that. There's a whole world of stuff we can do off the back of what we've got now. So what we're going to look at is a quick Power BI dashboard. We're going to load up some sample data and we'll see how we can use Power BI to actually go and track that information, monitor it. We could do things like tracking trends across the business. We can identify users that are struggling anyway. We can maybe identify trends. So as we go through different phases of the epidemic, we can see we're going to have peaks and troughs, and we may even be able to track that with the user sentiment as we go through. So we can start to see if the business is struggling, maybe we need to do some more work to actually encourage happiness, encourage well-being, encourage productivity. And then if the business is running a high, then maybe we can encapsulate that as well and make the most of when people are actually buzzing and enthusiastic and doing something. So the power that comes with this is very, very strong. But like I said at the beginning, so does the risk. We need to make sure that we are responsible employers, that we are actually doing this for the right reason, that we're not going to persecute our employees for struggling. This is a difficult situation we're in. So it's in our hands to do that. So we're going to have a quick look at Power BI now. We're not going to dwell on it for very long, but it's just give you an idea and a flavour of the sorts of things that we can do. So without further ado, let's jump into that bit and then we can finish off. So what we're going to do then, first thing we need to do is we need to load our information into Power BI. So on the Power BI desktop app, we're just going to go to Get Data and then we're going to choose Online Sources and SharePoint Online. And then that'll bring up a little window so we can put in our site URL here. So we'll just put the URL into the site that contains our SharePoint list. That gets loaded up. Okay, and it's going to show us all the lists available. There's a lot of lists on here we're going to ignore, a lot of internal SharePoint things. So just finding the name of the list that we put together. And then we're going to choose to transform it as well. So I always like to start off working quite heavily on my data. First thing I try to do is to actually hide the columns that we're not interested in. It just makes it easier when we're working with our data this way. So we'll go through, select all of them. So obviously we want to leave in feeling and exercise and the comment and the data was submitted, things like that. So let's just choose the items we're not interested in, keep going through. There's quite a few, so a lot of these are just internal SharePoint things. Oh, we don't want to move columns around, so just escape that. Very easy to click the wrong button. You could do a few columns, hide them, and then a few more columns and then hide them. I like to keep my list of actions as low as possible, so I do try and select all the ones I'm not interested in. We do want to keep the person field because that's the name of the person who's actually filling it in. So if we just remove that, so now we've only got the columns remaining in our data set that we actually want to work with. Now I just want to change the name of this column, so I think it's probably easier if you just double click it. So just give it a more friendly name, so date, the date that that row relates to. Now you might notice that person is actually a record, so we want to be able to easily get access to the person's name, so we can use that for filtering and grouping and things like that. So we can actually just create a new custom column, we'll call it person name, and then we can just reference the person field and the title. I think I got the wrong one there. I choose name. It's not actually name because that would be the claims logon name. I actually mean it to be person title. So that will give us the correct value there. If you're not sure what those fields are, you can just click on the record. It will show you the table that's in there, and you can pick out the correct property you want to access. So we've tidied up our data. We go and then we just click apply and update, and that'll go and apply it to our Power BI data set, and it just takes a couple of minutes to do it. SharePoint can be quite slow. If you have large data sets, it can take a while to do that. So our data is now ready to use. So if we just click on the, I think the table tab, then we can actually view our tabular data. I'm obviously just thinking about something here. There we go. So we can see our table data here, and we can see all the rows that we're interested in using is ready to go. One thing I didn't do is I didn't actually change the column types. So I want to make sure these are numbers. I want to, rather than just text, because I want to be able to apply formulas on them, sums, averages, and things like that. So if we go in and just strongly type these where possible, so anything that's a number, set it to a number. Anything that's a date, set it to a date. You'll just find it a lot easier to use Power BI if you do this right. It's definitely worth spending a lot of time in this area to transform your data. The better you make your data, the easier your life's going to be. So if you have a list of countries and you have United Kingdom mixed with UK, you can actually change your data as well. So you can make it all so it's consistent. You can set conditions for errors and things like that. So I definitely find a big part of Power BI work is actually just making sure your data is well managed. So again, we just save those updates, and now we're ready to go with our correct formatted data. So what we can do here, I'm going to keep this very, very simple. Power BI, we could go absolutely crazy with what we want to do. But I just want to clock some trends. So in the SharePoint list, we can get an idea of how people are feeling on a day-to-day or a week-by-week basis. But maybe we want to look at the trends over time. So I'm just going to choose an average. So I'm going to take an average of everybody's feeling on a particular day. So this is going to give us a company happiness scale. So we're going to know the peaks and the troughs. We can see here some days that the average is a 4, and some days the average goes down to a 1. So that might be tied into some kind of announcement, or maybe if you do something around working from home, maybe everyone suddenly loses interest and suddenly feels quite down. So this really gives us the ability to make some intelligent decisions across the business and track the trends. So as well as the average, we can also add in a legend as well, so we can view it user by user. So now we can get a view here of which users. Again, if you've got hundreds or thousands of users, you might want to format it in a different way, but the nice thing here is we can actually view how individuals are feeling and see if anyone is substantially down or anyone substantially better than the rest. So that's going to be really, really useful. And now if we just switch over to this other slide, this one I already had prepared as well. So this just gives us a view of average coronavirus cases. So we've picked up this data from the internet, plugged it in. So we can get an idea of the deaths, the infections, and everything else that's going on with COVID and coronavirus as a whole. And the nice thing with that is it actually allows us to then overlay our company's feeling with what's going on around the epidemic. And again, we can start to plot some trends and see if that's the reason why people are feeling up or down. Going into lockdown is probably going to tie in with deaths going up and things like that. So using Power BI on top of this data really gives us a lot of powerful capability and information and knowledge. Power BI business intelligence. That's really what we're working towards here. So you can see there's a lot of good stuff there. So there we have it. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope that was insightful. And I just want to go and give a quick recap on what it is that we've actually looked at today. So the theory behind what we wanted to achieve was to produce a mechanism for the business to keep abreast of the wellness of the people who actually are working in the organisation, especially now that we're going into a second lockdown in the UK and around more of the world. We want to make sure that our employees, while we can't see them, that they're being taken care of. They're happy, they're okay, and they're maintaining good mental health and hopefully getting some exercise in as well. So what we've done is we've used some great technologies, adaptive cards, to go and configure a short survey. Now you can put anything in here that you want to, different actions, different information. You can even share stats and updates with them if you wanted to. But it's a nice, easy way to just get them where they're at. They're in Microsoft Teams working, get them in the channels where they are, they're most prevalent, and you get to fill that form in. You can even take that adaptive card and you can actually plug it into different channels if you wanted to, not just Microsoft Teams. So it gives a user a nice personal way to actually interact with you. They click 2 buttons, click submit, and then they're done. So we just need to be aware that they're actually giving the correct feedback in the way that they're actually feeding. We're using Power Automate to improve our robotic process automation. We're automating that task. We don't need somebody to go around and constantly email someone and say, can you fill in the survey? Can you fill in the survey? Can you fill in the survey? This is all being done for us. All these tasks in our lives we need to be automating, and we need to be using Power Automate to do that. You can save a whole ton of time. We can put as much intelligence in there as you want to, as much complexity in there as you want to. But also simplicity is good. You don't have to overcomplicate things for the sake of it. So Power Automate really gives a way to drive that in. So there are different things you could do. You could layer on multiple Power Automate workflows as well. So you could have the first one that is really around getting the user to interact with the survey, and then you could have other Power Automate flows that are triggered from their response. The first one writes into a list, then maybe something happens with it. Based on what they submit, maybe it goes somewhere else. If they submit a 1 or 2, maybe a bot starts a conversation with them to ask them if they're okay, run through some symptom checkers, things like that. We can automate that. Or we could direct them to a human person if we're really worried about them. We could say if they've had consistently low days, then maybe we need to take a bit more action and highlight that. So Flow can really give us that ability to automate those processes, take it away from the human element, but make sure that we can interact and we can touch those people at the time that they need to be looked after. We have a lot of social responsibility to our employees through this time to make sure that they're happy and it can do it. The true beauty of something like Teams is the fact that it's where people are doing their work. It's not going to an email that comes in the void. It's a direct chat from the Flow service that comes to them. So it gets to them, the alert pops up on the phone, they get used to do it. And then the true jewel in the crown is Power BI. So what we do with that information going forward, how do we actually identify what's happening in the business? How do we understand what's going on? How do we start to predict what might happen? So if we see we've been through 2 lockdowns and then we see the happiness plummet, then maybe next time it happens, we can actually say, do you know what? We know what's going to happen. We know we're going to hit some issues with people's mental health. Therefore, we need to do something about it. So Power BI gives us that intelligence. It really lets us make good decisions. And we can overlay that with a whole ton of other information. So other things you've got going on, weather, the daylight, maybe people's happiness quotient suffers as daylight reduces and there's less sunlight, or maybe the time of year, things like that. So there's a whole lot of different elements you can pull in. And the more data you can model, the more data you can overlay, the more intelligence you can drive about what's going on, and then the more predictions you can make going forward. They truly are some incredible tools. I've covered this in an hour, some of it was sped up, but I think end to end to build this solution without doing all the video elements to it was probably about half a day's work. Half a day's work to get all of that value. That is incredible. If we were doing this through code 5 years ago, then you would be talking a 3-month project to do something like that, and it probably still wouldn't work that well. So the speed we can bring these solutions to market now is phenomenal. Once you get some practice and you build a few of these things, they're really not that difficult. Don't forget, we're sitting here as experts. You think we know it all? The only reason we know it all is because we've done it, we've tried it, we've done it again, done it again, done it again, and you can do exactly the same. So the key is get in there, get some ideas, get hands-on and build this stuff. Just try it out. The nice thing with this as well is we can do it piece by piece. By having multiple Power Automate flows, you can focus on one area, then focus on another area, do another area. They can all work in tandem, and it's really nice. So I hope this has been useful for you. I hope you've learned a lot, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much for joining me, Mark Stokes, and I look forward to seeing you next time.